You think you know what hell is. You don't. Because your version of hell is a literary metaphor, a picture from a medieval textbook, or a bad dream after a heavy dinner. But real hell exists on Earth right now, unfolding in real time while you sip your morning latte and scroll through your news feed. Pull up a satellite map of East Asia at night. Just Google it. You'll see a glowing ocean of lights. That's China, surging as an economic powerhouse. That's South Korea, practically vibrating with neon, tech, and life. That's Japan, sparkling like scattered diamonds. But right between them, smack in the middle of this roaring celebration of modern civilization, lies a black, dead hole. A total void. It looks like someone took a scalpel to reality, cut out a piece, and left a gaping wound. That is North Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It is the most deceitful name in human history because there are no people, no democracy, and no republic there. It is nothing but a massive barbed wire enclosed concentration camp, roughly the size of Mississippi. Forget those funny TikTok and YouTube videos where that strange lady in the pink traditional dress hysterically reads the news. Forget the memes about the chubby dictator inspecting factory lube or riding a white horse through the snow. Laughter is just our brain's defense mechanism. We laugh so we don't lose our minds from the sheer horror of it. But there is absolutely nothing funny here. Nothing. We're used to seeing this place as some bizarre communist theme park, a weird attraction stuck in the 1950s. But it's not an attraction. It's a death machine that has been running 24/7 for 3/4 of a century, grinding millions of human lives into bloody dust just to feed the ego of a single family. Right now, in 2026, while humanity is seriously debating Mars colonization and AI ethics, 25 million people are trapped in the Dark Ages. Electricity is a luxury for the elite. Hot water is a miracle. And a piece of meat on the table? That's a once-a-year feast celebrating the Supreme Leader's birthday. Imagine a country where time just stopped. Not like a fairy tale, but like a nightmare you can't wake up from. A place where the very concept of individuality has been erased, obliterated, burned out with a branding iron. Where you don't own a single second of yourself from birth to death. Where your thoughts, your dreams, your feelings are strictly regulated by the party. It's a kingdom of shadows where people are reduced to biomass, expendable material, fuel to keep a regime running, a regime that should have collapsed under the weight of its own crimes decades ago. Yet it stands. It survives on fear, on lies, and on absolute suffocating silence. The world has gotten comfortable turning a blind eye to what happens beyond the 38th parallel. It's easier for us to just brush it off, to say, well, it's a different culture. They chose this path. But that's a lie. A monstrous lie we tell ourselves to justify our own apathy. Nobody chooses starvation. Nobody chooses torture. Nobody chooses to live in a state of constant terror, where a knock on the door in the middle of the night means the end. Where your neighbor, your friend, or even your own kid could rat you out simply because you didn't cry hard enough at the latest Kim's funeral, or because a single speck of dust landed on the leader's portrait. We see the parades in Pyongyang, the perfectly synchronized blocks of soldiers, the massive missiles rolling by on transporter trucks, and we see power. But it's not power. It's a movie set, a facade hiding nothing but rot, ruin, and despair. This system is a house of cards, held up entirely by momentum and nuclear blackmail, because the only thing they've actually mastered is how to kill and how to threaten to kill. North Korea is the black mirror of our world. It's a glaring reminder of how fast civilization can slide back into barbarism if we let madmen seize power and outlaw critical thinking. We're going to walk down those dark streets together. We're going behind the curtain of this bloody theater of the absurd. We're going to skip the glossy propaganda and look at real life, a life reeking of cheap tobacco, unwashed bodies, and pure hopelessness. We're going to talk about the things diplomats avoid and journalists are afraid to print. We are going to pop this blister and understand exactly how an entire nation ended up held hostage by a gang of psychopaths, and why this horrific human experiment has been allowed to go on for so long. This isn't just a story about some faraway country in Asia. It's a story about the nature of power, the psychology of submission, and the hard truth that evil, if left unchecked, spreads like a cancer, devouring everything alive in its path. Welcome to the real world. Welcome to North Korea, exactly as you've never seen it, and probably never wanted to see it. But you need to know this, because ignorance doesn't absolve you of responsibility, and indifference is the greatest crime of all. Have you ever been on a movie set? After the cameras stop rolling, the actors have retreated to their trailers and the stage lights go dark. All that's left are empty sets, plywood facades hiding absolutely nothing but wooden props and pure emptiness. That exact feeling washes over any rational person who steps foot in Pyongyang, the supposed showcase of socialism, a city engineered to broadcast an illusion of prosperity to the globe. Pyongyang isn't a city built for living. It's a city built for showing off. It's a massive Potemkin village, forged from concrete and steel, erected on the bones of millions of starving peasants, just to throw dust in the eyes of the few foreign tourists allowed in, and the less fortunate citizens trapped outside this gilded cage. Take a mental walk down those unnervingly wide, empty boulevards. The roads are broad enough to land a Boeing 747, yet there's virtually no traffic. Just a handful of aging Mercedes driven by the party elite, and green trolley buses packed with gray, exhausted faces. There are no traffic jams, no honking, none of the chaotic hustle you'd expect in a metropolis. Instead, a dead, sterile silence hangs in the air, broken only by patriotic propaganda music blaring from loudspeakers you are never allowed to turn off. Look at the skyscrapers on Jangmadang Street, built in record time on the Supreme Leader's orders. They look modern, almost futuristic from a distance. But step a little closer and you'll spot the cracks in the cheap concrete and the warped window frames. You quickly realize these aren't real homes. They're props. Elevators in these high-rises rarely work because of constant power grid failures, leaving the elderly living on the 30th or 40th floors effectively trapped. They literally cannot make it down. They are entombed in the sky. There's no running water up there either, so residents have to haul it up by the bucket. Picture the sheer surrealism of it, a gleaming skyscraper that looks like a snapshot of tomorrow, while inside people are living like it's the 1800s, lugging water up pitch-black stairwells. But the most terrifying part of Pyongyang isn't the architecture, it's the people, or rather, the total absence of people as we understand the term. You won't see couples kissing on park benches. You won't find street musicians, spontaneous gatherings, genuine laughter, or life. The residents navigate the city like programmed droids following rigid trajectories. Home, work, ideological brainwashing sessions, and back home. Everyone is dressed identically, modest, drab, and gray. Wearing bright colors is taboo, and expressing individuality is a straight-up crime. Even hairstyles are strictly mandated by the state, from an approved list of cuts. God forbid you ask for something different, as it will be branded anti-socialist behavior. Pyongyang is a city systematically scrubbed of the disabled, of frail-looking seniors, of anyone struggling with mental illness. Anyone deemed defective is exiled far beyond the city limits, so they don't ruin the pristine optics of the socialist paradise. This is fascist eugenics in action, masquerading behind slogans of state care. Earning the right to live in the capital is a high-tier privilege you have to buy with absolute loyalty. The residents here are an elite caste, the Praetorian Guard of the regime. They live infinitely better than the other 90% of the country. They get food rations and housing, but the price for a full stomach is the complete surrender of their souls. They know exactly what's happening outside the city limits. They know people in the provinces are boiling grass and chewing tree bark, but they keep their mouths shut, avert their eyes, and pretend to believe the fairy tales about the supreme leader, because the terror of losing their status overpowers whatever conscience they have left. And when night falls, the city plunges into darkness, a real, suffocating pitch black. The state pinches every penny to make sure there's enough cash left to build missiles. The only things brightly illuminated by floodlights are the colossal bronze statues of the Kims, towering like pagan idols demanding a sacrifice. The light creeping out of apartment windows is dim, because families use the lowest wattage bulbs to avoid running up their meters. The city dies every single night, only to be resurrected the next morning for another grueling day of pointless labor and hypocrisy. Tourists are strictly herded along pre-approved routes to marvel at model schools, pristine hospitals, and subway stations with chandeliers that rival palaces. They will never be shown the underbelly. They won't see the filthy back alleys doubling as trash dumps, or the freezing apartments of ordinary workers where winter temperatures barely hover above freezing. Pyongyang is a ghost town populated by phantoms, terrified of their own shadows. It's a city where the sheer scale of the architecture is designed to crush you, to make you feel completely insignificant and powerless before the state. It stands as a cold mausoleum for the living, a monument to human vanity and cruelty, where even the oxygen feels thick with lies and despair. Staring at this city, one simple truth hits you. Dictatorships are incapable of creating anything truly alive. They can only simulate life, churning out grotesque, hollow copies completely devoid of meaning. And Pyongyang is the most grandiose, tragic simulation in recorded history. You look at this pudgy guy in his goofy black Mao suit, sporting that bizarre trapezoid haircut, and you almost want to laugh. He looks like a walking caricature, a campy villain from an old James Bond flick you couldn't possibly take seriously. But the moment you stop laughing and look into the eyes of the 25 million people bowing face down in the dirt before him, you'll see an abyss that makes your blood run cold. This isn't politics, it's religion. It's the most brutal, fanatical, and bloodthirsty cult on the planet, where the deity is actually real, breathing, gorging on Swiss cheese, and throwing back expensive cognac while his flock literally drops dead from starvation. The Kim Dynasty's cult of personality goes way beyond hanging a few portraits on the wall. It's a mass lobotomy of an entire nation, a surgical extraction of critical thinking executed on the statewide scale. According to their official state mythology, the moment Kim Jong-il was born, a new star lit up the sky, and winter instantly turned into spring. In reality, he was born in a Soviet military camp near Khabarovsk, and his birth name was Yuri Irsenovich. But in North Korea, the truth is high treason. They didn't just rewrite history, they rewrote the laws of physics and biology to manufacture gods made of flesh and bone. Citizens are told with a straight face that their leaders never have to use the bathroom because their perfect bodies absorb 100% of the nutrients they consume. They are taught that Kim Jong-un learned to drive at age 3 and was winning competitive yacht races by the time he was 9. And people believe it. They have to, because harboring a single doubt means a death sentence. Picture this. In every room of your house, in every classroom, inside every subway car, hang the portraits of 2 dead gods and 1 living one. You are strictly forbidden from turning your back to them, and God help you if a speck of dust settles on the glass. Every household is issued a special white cloth kept in a designated box, and every single morning you are required to polish those portraits. If a state inspector drops by and finds a smudge, you're getting shipped off to a gulag. This insanity seeps into every pore of daily life. If a house catches fire, the absolute first thing a North Korean citizen must save isn't their IDs, their cash, or even their own kids. It's the portraits of the leaders. There are documented cases of parents burning alive, trying to rescue those frames from the flames. The state posthumously declared them heroes. Meanwhile, those who saved their children but left the portraits to burn faced public shaming and a one-way ticket to a political prison camp. It's an entirely inverted moral universe, where a piece of paper with a printed face holds more value than a human heartbeat. Look at the newsreel footage showing crowds of people weeping hysterically at the mere sight of the Supreme Leader's limo. They are convulsing, tearing at their clothes, sprinting alongside the car, ready to throw themselves under the tires. You probably think it's all staged, right? Partly, yes, but it's a performance fueled entirely by primal, animalistic terror. Every single person in that crowd knows the score. If you don't cry convincingly enough, if your grief or your joy doesn't look completely genuine to the secret police scanning the crowd, a black van is pulling up to your house tomorrow. It is emotional abuse elevated to an absolute art form. The state forces people to violate their own minds, faking ecstasy until that fake ecstasy permanently rewires their broken psyches. This dynasty doesn't rule because of a booming economy. They rule by blood. The right blood, the Pektu bloodline as they call it. It's unadulterated racism and feudalism wrapped in socialist packaging. Power is passed down from father to son just like a medieval monarchy, and every new Kim has to prove his capacity for pure ruthlessness just to keep his throne from wobbling. Kim Jong-un, the same smiling guy who shook hands with the US president, kicked off his reign by executing his own uncle with an anti-aircraft gun and assassinating his half-brother with a chemical nerve agent in the middle of a Kuala Lumpur airport. He sent a crystal-clear message to the elites. I will kill. I will kill my own flesh and blood. I will kill outsiders, and I will drown this country in blood if it means keeping my grip on power. And the most chilling part of this cult is that it doesn't just steal people's freedom. It steals time itself. In North Korea, it isn't 2026. It's Juche 115. Their entire calendar starts over from the year Kim Il-sung was born. They exist in an alternate dimension, an artificial bubble where the sun rises and sets only because the party ordered it to. Every adult North Korean wears a pin with the leader's face pinned over their left breast. It sits right above the heart as a mark of ownership, like branding cattle. A constant reminder that your heart doesn't belong to you, it belongs to him. It's state-sponsored vampirism, where one well-fed clan sucks the lifeblood out of an entire population, demanding not just obedience, but literal god worship in return. It is a death cult masquerading as a festival of eternal life, and this blood-soaked carnival just keeps spinning, while the rest of the world grimaces and changes the channel. Starvation isn't that feeling when you skip lunch and your stomach rumbles, and it's certainly not the pangs of a crash diet to get ready for summer beach season. True starvation is a slow, agonizing process of self-cannibalization. Once the body burns through its fat reserves, it starts digesting its own muscles, then the internal organs, and finally the brain, turning a human being into a delirious, walking corpse. In North Korea, famine isn't a state of emergency. It's an instrument of statecraft. It is the very bedrock the regime is built on, because a person whose entire mental bandwidth is consumed by finding a handful of rice is physically incapable of rebelling. They have no energy for a revolution, no strength left even for hatred, only the primal animal instinct to survive. Back in the 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed and the flow of cheap fuel and fertilizer dried up, all hell broke loose. The state's cynical propaganda machine branded it the Arduous March, a beautiful, heroic spin for the literal genocide of their own people. Nobody knows exactly how many died back then. Statistics in that country are state secrets, guarded more fiercely than nuclear launch codes. But independent experts estimate anywhere from 500,000 to 3 million people perished. Just try to wrap your head around that. The entire population of a major city like Chicago just wiped off the map, dissolved into mass graves. People would drop dead right on the streets or at train stations, and nobody even batted an eye because death had become utterly mundane. Corpses were tossed into the back of trucks like cordwood. The survivors ate anything they could physically chew. They stripped the bark off pine trees, ate grass, caught rats, snakes, and frogs, and scavenged for roots in the mountains. An entire generation of orphan children emerged, known as the kotjebi, or fluttering swallows. Little street kids with distended, malnourished bellies and arms like matchsticks, roaming the markets in packs to steal food. Police would shoot them on sight or round them up into orphanages where they were left to die of typhus and dysentery. That famine permanently altered the nation's biology. It triggered an anthropological catastrophe that you can see with the naked eye today. The average North Korean is now 3 to 4 inches shorter and 20 to 30 pounds lighter than their South Korean counterpart. They look like two entirely different species, separated by nothing but barbed wire. The military actually had to lower its minimum height requirement for draftees to 4'8", because otherwise they wouldn't have anyone left to serve. Let that sink in. 4'8". That is the size of a fourth grader. But in North Korea, that's the size of a soldier defending a nuclear-armed state. Severe childhood malnutrition causes irreversible brain damage and stunts cognitive development. The regime is literally breeding a nation of physically weak, mentally stunted people who are exponentially easier to control. And against this backdrop of an ocean of human suffering, amid all those empty rice bowls, look at the elite. Look at the top officials and generals with their greasy, glistening faces and necks thicker than their heads. Look at the supreme leader, who tips the scales at nearly 300 pounds. Kim Jong-un might literally be the only fat man in the entire country, and his obesity isn't just a metabolic quirk, it's a symbol. It's a massive spit in the face to every starving kid in that nation. While ordinary people are boiling soup out of the corn cobs we'd tossed to livestock, the elite are ordering European delicacies, premium liquor, and marbled beef, dodging global sanctions through complex smuggling rings. The state even invented a deeply hypocritical slogan: "Let's eat 2 meals a day," trying to spin absolute destitution as a health-conscious lifestyle choice. They tell the public that eating too much is harmful and causes obesity, while the very concept of being overweight sounds like pure science fiction to the average North Korean. Today, in 2026, the specter of famine is stalking the country once again. The borders were sealed shut for years due to the pandemic, trade with China flatlined, and the price of rice skyrocketed. Reports of starvation in the remote provinces are filtering out again. People are fleeing into the mountains to forage for grass, and mothers are boiling water mixed with sawdust just to trick their children's empty stomachs. It's an endless loop of misery, a vicious cycle with no exit, because for this regime, food is a weapon. The distribution of rations is the ultimate lever of power. If you are loyal, you get rice. If you question the state, you eat dirt. This is the anatomy of starvation, where a basic physiological process has been weaponized into political technology, the most brutal, effective tool ever invented by tyrants. We look at a map and see a country, but what we're actually looking at is a giant, slow-motion famine. Millions of lives quietly fading away to the soundtrack of brass bands and the roar of ballistic missile engines, a noise purposely designed to drown out the silent moans of people dying from exhaustion. Imagine a world where the concept of personal space literally doesn't exist, where you are never, ever alone. Not even when you lock the bathroom door or pull the covers over your head in your own bedroom. Because here, even the silence has ears, and those ears are wired straight into the walls of your home. North Korea runs the most terrifyingly perfect, dirt-cheap surveillance state in human history, human-to-human spying. They don't need millions of facial recognition cameras or AI like China. Here, every citizen is a walking CCTV camera, every neighbor is a potential secret police officer, and every coworker is a snitch dying to sell you out just to get an extra ration of rice or to deflect suspicion from themselves. The backbone of this system is the Inminban, the neighborhood watch group, a cell of 20 to 30 families run by a chief, usually a hardened, elderly party loyalist who knows everything about you. How many times you flushed the toilet, who came over, what you whispered in the kitchen, and why your lights were on 10 minutes past curfew. She has the legal authority to walk into your apartment at any time, day or night, to check if your radio dial is still soldered shut so you don't accidentally catch a broadcast from Seoul, hunt for hidden bags of rice under the floorboards, and inspect the portraits of the leaders for dust. You cannot hide from this woman. She is the all-seeing eye of the regime in your apartment building, and crossing her is basically signing your own death warrant. But the most diabolical control mechanism is the weekly self-criticism and mutual criticism sessions, known as senghua chonghua. Picture this weekly ritual of humiliation. Every Saturday, you sit in a circle with your coworkers or neighbors, stand up, and publicly confess your sins to the party. You have to say, "Comrades, this week I didn't study the great leader's teachings hard enough, and I was 2 minutes late for work. I am guilty." But that's not enough, because repentance is only half the job. To survive, you have to throw someone else under the bus. You have to stand up and say, "But Comrade Park fell asleep during the political briefing, and Comrade Lee was seen talking to a suspicious person." It is social cannibalism elevated to state policy, a meat grinder that shreds friendship, trust, and solidarity to pieces. You can't trust anyone because your best friend might sell you out at tomorrow's meeting, simply because they have a quota of criticism to meet. This poison seeps right into the family, destroying the most sacred human bonds. Kids are brainwashed starting in kindergarten, taught that their true father is Marshal Kim Jong-un, and their biological parents are just caretakers. So if mom or dad says anything bad about the party at home, a good pioneer's duty is to tell their teacher. And the kids do it, ratting out their own parents, while genuinely believing they are acting like heroes. Until the black vans roll up in the dead of night, the parents vanish forever, and the kid is left with a shiny medal and the lifelong stigma of being the child of an enemy of the state. It is a society of absolute crushing loneliness, where millions of people live side by side, but are separated by invisible walls of terror. You're terrified of talking in your sleep. You're afraid to joke. You're afraid to express emotion. People wear masks 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Every North Korean has two faces, one for the street, for the rallies, for chanting slogans, frozen in a mask of absolute devotion. The other face is buried deep inside, hidden in the darkest corner of their soul. The face of a cornered animal that understands exactly what is happening, but can't even whimper. The Ministry of State Security, their version of the KGB or the Stasi, works flawlessly, having engineered an atmosphere of thick, sticky terror that hangs in the air like smog. Rumors of what happens in the basements of their headquarters are passed along in terrified whispers. Stories that turn 20-year-old men's hair gray. Electric shocks, beatings, and solitary confinement cells where you can't even stand up or lie down aren't campfire ghost stories. They are just standard interrogation procedure. There is no presumption of innocence here. You are presumed guilty. If they took you, you did it. And your only goal isn't to prove your innocence, but to sign a confession as fast as humanly possible, just to make the pain stop. When George Orwell wrote 1984, he thought he was writing a dystopian warning. But the Kim Dynasty read it as an instruction manual, a business plan, and they completely outdid the author's wildest nightmares. In their reality, Big Brother isn't just watching you from a screen. He lives inside your head. He speaks with your tongue. He looks through your eyes. And the only way to evict him is to die. When a state completely fails its primary function, feeding its own people, the people take matters into their own calloused, dirt-stained hands. That's when, cracking through the concrete of totalitarianism and the asphalt of repression, the weed of the free market sprouts. Wild, uncontrollable, but fiercely alive. Officially, capitalism does not exist in North Korea. Profiteering gets you a firing squad, and private property is utter heresy. But walk to the outskirts of literally any provincial town, and you'll hit the Jangmadang, the black market. It's the pulsating heart of this dying economy, the exact spot where socialism ends and Darwinian survival of the fittest begins. This isn't the kind of market you're used to, with neat stalls and price tags. It's a chaotic sea of people squatting in the mud, selling absolutely anything that can be sold, just to buy a handful of rice and survive until tomorrow morning. The Jangmadang was born during the famine of the 90s, when the state rationing system completely collapsed, and the party basically told the public, "You're on your own, we owe you nothing." So the people started surviving on their own. First, the women, the true unsung heroes of North Korean survival, started trading old clothes for food. Then they baked corn cakes to sell. Soon, smugglers appeared, swimming across the freezing Yalu River with sacks of Chinese junk on their backs, while staring down the barrels of border guards' rifles. Today, you can buy absolutely anything at these markets, if you have the cash. From Chinese condoms and South Korean cosmetics, to crystal meth and thumb drives loaded with Hollywood blockbusters. It's a parallel universe where US dollars, Chinese yuan, and euros carry far more weight than portraits of the leaders. A place where a person's status isn't dictated by their party membership card, but by the thickness of their wallet. The regime absolutely despises these markets because markets equal freedom. Markets equal information. Markets are where people actually talk to each other instead of just listening to lectures. But the state can't shut them down because without them, the entire country would starve to death in a month. So the authorities opted for a parasitic approach. They pretend the markets don't exist while simultaneously feeding off them. The cops and secret police don't patrol the aisles to arrest smugglers. They're there to collect protection money, bribes, and kickbacks. The whole system is so rotten that a border guard will let a smuggler through with a bag of banned electronics for $50, and a party secretary will turn a blind eye to an underground sweatshop making knockoff sneakers as long as he gets his cut. North Korean capitalism is an ugly mutant surgically fused with corruption. It's the Wild West with absolutely no laws, just the rule of force and the rule of cash. Picture the atmosphere. You're squeezing through narrow aisles, mud squelching under your boots, surrounded by the deafening roar of thousands of voices haggling over every single one. The smell of fried tofu mixes with the stench of sweat and cheap cigarettes. The vendors, mostly middle-aged women known as ajumas, sit there deadpan, but their eyes dart constantly, scanning the crowd for paying customers and incoming threats. If an inspection patrol shows up, the market folds in on itself instantly, like a living organism. People grab their bags and scatter into the alleyways, only to trickle back an hour later because they literally have no other choice. They aren't just selling goods here. They're selling hope. A flash drive loaded with the South Korean show Squid Game or K-pop tracks might cost a worker's entire monthly salary, but people buy them anyway, risking their freedom. Because that drive is a window into another universe, hard proof that there's another way to live, that somewhere down south people are well-fed, beautiful, and free. The Jangmadang is the single most powerful anti-government force in the country, way more dangerous to Kim than a fleet of American aircraft carriers. The market teaches self-reliance. It shatters the psychology of a slave waiting for a handout from the master. The Jangmadang generation, the youth who grew up haggling in these bazaars, don't believe the fairy tales about the Sun King leader anymore. They believe in the almighty dollar. They know the value of hard work, and they are cynical, pragmatic, and pissed off. They see that the party gives them absolutely nothing but empty slogans, while the market gives them food and sneakers. It's a ticking time bomb planted right under the regime's foundation. The government tries to tighten the screws, ban trading, and impose crazy new currency restrictions. But you can't put the genie back in the bottle. People have tasted money. They've tasted the freedom of a private life, however meager it might be, and they will fight tooth and nail to defend their right to buy and sell. Today, North Korea isn't a monolith. It's a layered cake. On top is a thin, glossy layer of red communist propaganda. But underneath, a ruthless, cutthroat, bizarre capitalism is boiling, festering, and eating away at the system's pillars from the inside. And one day, that bazaar is going to swallow the palace whole.
If you think the Gulag is a thing of the past, safely buried in the pages of Solzhenitsyn, or if you believe that in the 21st century it's impossible to hide a network of death camps where hundreds of thousands of people are ground into dust, then you are naive, criminally naive. Welcome to the Kwanliso, North Korea's network of concentration camps, a black archipelago of pain scattered across the most remote, uninhabitable mountain regions of the country. They are perfectly visible on Google Earth satellite imagery, yet the world actively chooses to look the other way.
These aren't prisons in the traditional sense, where inmates sit in cells, wait for a trial, and hope for parole. No, these are closed-off zones of total annihilation. Massive, fenced-in territories the size of entire cities, where people are sent without trial or investigation, disappearing into the void. A person is dragged out of their home in the dead of night, and they simply cease to exist. Their name is crossed off housing registers, erased from school logs, and scrubbed from memory. And the most terrifying rule of this system is the 3 generations of punishment doctrine, instituted by the dynasty's founder, Kim Il-sung. Class enemies must be eliminated through 3 generations. That means if a grandfather slips up and says a careless word about the party, he doesn't just go to the camp alone. His son goes, and his grandson goes, even if that grandson is a nursing infant. Kids are born in these camps, grow up in these camps, and die in these camps without ever laying eyes on the outside world. They don't know what money, television, or ice cream is. All they know is starvation, beatings, and back-breaking hard labor. The living conditions there defy human comprehension. Prisoners work 16 to 18 hours a day in coal mines, logging camps, and uranium mines. They have no protective gear, no heavy machinery, just bare hands chipping away at solid rock while choking on coal dust and radiation. A daily ration is a few ounces of cornmeal and a watery bowl of salted cabbage soup, if they're lucky. People resort to eating rats, worms, and snakes. They pick undigested kernels of grain out of animal dung just to stave off starvation. The average life expectancy in the camp is 5 to 7 years. People burn out, turning into living skeletons draped in parchment-thin skin, staring out with massive, terror-filled eyes. Guards use prisoners as live targets to practice taekwondo, rape women at will, and force mothers to drown their own newborns in buckets of water because the spawn of a traitor has no right to live. The camps are divided into different zones. There's the revolutionaryization zone, where you can theoretically be released after re-education, though the few who actually make it out are physically and mentally mutilated beyond repair. And then there is the total control zone, a one-way ticket where release is mathematically impossible. Camp 14, Camp 16, Camp 22. These are the literal geographic coordinates of hell. Former guards and the rare defectors who miraculously managed to escape describe horrific medical experiments on humans. Prisoners are gassed with chemical weapons, injected with experimental biological agents, and subjected to organ harvesting without anesthesia, used as test subjects like lab frogs. This is a factory of death operating with mechanical precision and unadulterated savagery. But the most monstrous part of it all is how the system fractures the human psyche. Inside these camps, there is no solidarity. It's a vicious, dog-eat-dog nightmare. Prisoners are forced to spy on each other, snitch, and beat their own comrades for infractions. Just to get an extra bowl of slop, a son will rat out his mother, a brother will sell out his brother. Human dignity is ground down to absolute zero, until nothing is left but naked instinct. Shin Dong-hyuk, the only person known to have been born in a total control zone and escaped, confessed how he hated his mother for eating his portion of rice. He snitched on her to the guards when she planned to escape, and he watched her hang without feeling a shred of pity, only malicious satisfaction. The system turns victims into accomplices. It murders the soul long before it kills the body. And the world knows about this. The UN publishes reports, human rights activists scream about it at global conferences, and satellites photograph the new barracks and freshly dug mass graves. Yet nothing changes. Politicians shake Kim Jong-un's hand, smile for the cameras at summit meetings, and talk about denuclearization. But absolutely no one makes shutting down these camps a precondition for a deal. The lives of hundreds of thousands of Koreans are just bargaining chips in a massive geopolitical chess game, a rounding error that can be ignored. The Kim Archipelago is a festering wound on the body of humanity. It is living proof that we learned absolutely nothing from Auschwitz and Buchenwald, and that the phrase, "never again," is just empty noise. It's a beautiful lie we tell to comfort ourselves, while somewhere in the freezing mountains of North Korea, another child is dying from the butt of a rifle, not even understanding what he is being murdered for. If you want to understand why a regime that can't even feed its own people rice is blowing billions of dollars on doomsday weapons, you have to understand the psychology of a cornered mobster. The North Korean nuclear program isn't about military supremacy. It's about the sheer physical survival of the ruling family. It is Kim Jong-un's one and only insurance policy, guaranteeing he won't be dragged out of a drainage pipe like Gaddafi or hanged like Saddam Hussein. Those Hwasong missiles they so proudly parade through Kim Il-sung Square on massive transporter erector launchers, they are phallic symbols of power in an impotent nation. It's the only thing forcing the globe to take this destitute rogue state seriously. But let's look under the hood of those missiles. Sure, they fly, and sure, they explode, but at what cost? We're looking at 1960s technology stolen from the Soviet Union, bought on the black market from Pakistani physicists, and jury-rigged in underground bunkers by starving engineers who know that if the rocket fails to launch, their families face a firing squad. It's a Rusty Sledgehammer, terrifying precisely because of its sheer unpredictability. They launch missiles that splash down in the Sea of Japan or disintegrate in mid-air. Yet every successful launch is broadcast as the greatest triumph in galactic history. They've built an outright cult of the missile. School kids literally draw mushroom clouds over Washington, D.C. in art class, and state TV loops music videos of American cities being consumed by nuclear fire, set to upbeat pop music. It is a schizophrenic militarization of the mind, where the atom bomb has become an object of religious worship, the holy grail of the Juche ideology. The whole world is left guessing. Do they actually have a warhead capable of reaching Los Angeles? Can it survive atmospheric re-entry without burning up? It is Russian roulette on a planetary scale. But the real danger isn't that Kim will just press the button first. He's not suicidal. He loves his palaces, his mistresses, his yachts, and his imported Swiss cheese. The real danger is an accident. A technical glitch. Some antiquated radar system mistaking a flock of geese for a squadron of American B-52s. They don't have a red phone line to Washington. They don't have modern safety protocols. All they have is paranoia. One wrong move, one highly strung kernel at a launch site, and an unstoppable chain reaction begins. In a matter of minutes, Seoul, a thriving metropolis of millions, located barely 30 miles from the border, would be reduced to a sea of fire. And that's without even using nukes, just from the sheer barrage of thousands of conventional artillery pieces hidden in the mountains. And while these rockets roar into the sky, leaving a white contrail behind them, a silent tragedy unfolds down in the dirt. Every single missile launch burns millions of dollars. It incinerates thousands of tons of food that was never bought, and medicine that was never delivered to hospitals. It is money ripped straight out of the mouths of starving children. The country is literally cannibalizing itself to feed its missiles. They export coal, seafood, and even slave labor to Russia and China just to score hard currency for bomb components. While back home, doctors perform surgeries without anesthesia under the glow of flashlights, and the water in people's buckets freezes solid inside their own apartments during winter. It's an economy of absolute absurdity, where manufacturing death takes total precedence over preserving life. The population takes immense pride in their country's ability to destroy the world, even though they can't afford to buy a bicycle. The North Korean military, the fourth largest standing army on the planet with 1.2 million active troops, is just another house of cards. The soldiers you see goose-stepping in the parades are the hand-picked elite, but out in the regular units, malnutrition and brutal hazing are the norm. Troops routinely steal crops from local farmers just to keep from starving to death. They look like stunted teenagers drowning in baggy uniforms, and their armor is museum-grade junk left over from the Korean War. T-34 and T-55 tanks you practically have to push-start. But they have a nuclear club, and they swing it in the world's face like a drunk bar brawler waving a broken beer bottle, demanding free drinks. and the world gives them those drinks. The international community sends humanitarian aid and makes concessions because absolutely nobody wants to tangle with a lunatic holding a live grenade in his pocket. It is statecraft through blackmail, straight-up geopolitical racketeering. As long as Kim has the bomb, he knows he's untouchable. A nuclear mushroom cloud is the only shadow under which this vampire regime, terrified of the light of truth and transparency, can survive. The most terrifying weapon in this regime's arsenal isn't a nuclear warhead, chemical artillery, or even starvation. The most terrifying weapon is the absolute, deafening, hermetically sealed silence an entire nation is forced to live in. It's an information vacuum designed to suck out the human capacity to think, to compare, and to question. Imagine being born in a basement, and from day one, you are told that a raging apocalypse is wiping out the surface, that the sky is toxic green and the air is lethal, and the only person keeping you alive is the landlord who occasionally drops off food. North Korea is exactly that, a basement the size of a country. It's a real-life Truman Show, but without the benevolent director or the happy ending. It is Plato's cave, where 25 million prisoners stare at shadows on a wall and believe it's the only reality that exists. The technical execution of this isolation is diabolically brilliant. Every single radio sold in stores is hardwired and soldered permanently to the state broadcasting frequency. You physically cannot change the dial, and if the police run a random inspection and find a broken seal or a tampered wire, you are going straight to a gulag for listening to enemy broadcasts. The internet, the global web of human knowledge, literally does not exist for the average citizen. Instead, they have Pyongyang, a surrogate intranet. It's a digital livestock pen totally severed from the outside world, where you can only look up state-approved recipes, the ideological writings of the leaders, and news reports about how America is rotting from the inside while the Juche state thrives. It is a sterilized, castrated version of reality, completely scrubbed of anything that might spark a critical thought. A lot of people have cell phones now, but making an international call is physically impossible. It's a closed-loop system, a digital penitentiary. Propaganda fills this vacuum with a thick, sticky fog of lies. From kindergarten, kids are brainwashed into believing that Americans are long-nosed wolves who obsess over murdering Korean children. First-grade math textbooks literally feature word problems like, "A brave soldier of the People's Army killed 5 American bastards and then killed 3 more. How many bastards did he wipe out in total?" History has been entirely rewritten. They are taught that South Korea and the US launched an unprovoked invasion against the North in 1950, even though the rest of the planet knows it was the exact opposite. They are told that South Korea is hell on earth, a slum where people live in absolute slavery under American imperialists, surrounded by poverty and moral decay. But even in this concrete wall of lies, there are cracks. And those cracks are widening. The regime's #1 enemy today isn't a CIA spy. It's South Korean K-dramas, K-pop music, and Hollywood action flicks slipping across the border on tiny USB drives and micro SD cards. This is the smuggling of truth, and it blows minds wider open than any dynamite could. When a North Korean secretly watches a show under a blanket with the curtains drawn shut and the volume on the lowest notch, they aren't looking at the plot. They are looking at the background. They see that these supposed slaves in the South are driving luxury cars, living in spacious apartments, wearing nice clothes, and, most importantly, living free. They see hot water on tap, meat on the dinner table every night, and people openly bashing their own president without getting dragged off to a camp. It triggers a massive cognitive dissonance that instantly shatters their entire worldview. The authorities know exactly how dangerous this is, and they are reacting with animalistic savagery. In 2020, they passed the Reactionary Ideology and Culture Rejection Act, which mandates the death penalty for distributing South Korean media. Think about that. A firing squad for passing around a flash drive with Squid Game on it. Execution for listening to a BTS track. Teenagers caught watching banned videos are publicly executed in stadiums, so the entire town can see the ultimate price of curiosity. Their parents are subsequently hauled off to the gulags. The state created elite strike forces known as Group 109 that raid homes and immediately kill the power, so that a smuggled DVD or tape gets jammed inside the player as irrefutable evidence, tearing the house apart inch by inch. Yet people keep watching. They keep risking their lives for a tiny sip of a different reality, because suffocating in a vacuum is simply unbearable. This absolute information quarantine is forging a nation of psychologically crippled people who have zero understanding of how the modern world actually functions. They don't know what a credit card is. They don't grasp the concept of human rights, and the idea of traveling for leisure is alien to them. If the wall comes down tomorrow, millions of North Koreans will be like helpless children thrust into an adult world. They will be prime targets for scammers and cults, suffering from the most brutal culture shock imaginable. But the wall will fall. It cannot stand forever, because technology seeps through cracks like water. Starlink satellite internet, drones, micro-storage devices, they are all steadily eroding the foundation of the lie. The Kim regime survives exclusively in the dark, but dawn is inevitable. When the blinding light of truth finally floods that country, it will shock them, but it will also set them free. The battle for minds is the final battle of this war, and the dictatorship is already losing it, slowly but irreversibly. Because human curiosity will always overpower terror, and sooner or later, truth always beats a lie. Even a lie armed with a nuclear warhead. History teaches us one absolute, undeniable truth that dictators of all stripes stubbornly try to ignore. No tyranny lasts forever. And the tighter a regime twists the screws, the more violently the threads will eventually strip. It's bound to happen, because the laws of thermodynamics apply to politics too. Entropy always defeats a system built on pure violence. We look at North Korea and see a granite monolith, a bug permanently trapped in amber that could hang there for millions of years. But that is a dangerous optical illusion. Deep inside that monolith, irreversible processes of decay are churning. The structural metal fatigue has reached a critical breaking point. And when this behemoth finally collapses, the fallout will trigger a geopolitical tsunami that will wash away stability across East Asia and splatter blood across the globe. The fall of the Kim dynasty won't look anything like the velvet revolutions of Eastern Europe, where people just gathered in town squares, jingled their keys, and the Berlin Wall came tumbling down to the tune of Beethoven. No, there will be no music here, only screaming. When central authority in Pyongyang inevitably fractures, whether from the sudden death of the dictator, a military coup, or total economic collapse, what follows won't be a peaceful transition to democracy. It will be a savage, all-out civil war. Generals commanding different military factions will instantly morph into warlords, each scrambling to carve out their own piece of the pie. The secret police will start liquidating witnesses to cover up their atrocities, and the elite, knowing full well they have nowhere to run, will fight with the cornered desperation of rats. They know the people won't forgive them. The people will tear them apart with their bare hands. Picture Syria or Libya, but armed with unsecured nuclear weapons. Imagine a rogue colonel sitting in a bunker with his finger on a launch button, ready to sell a nuclear warhead to terrorists for a suitcase of cash, or use it to settle a score with a rival faction. This is the exact nightmare that keeps defense strategists awake at night in Washington, Beijing, and Seoul. The humanitarian catastrophe will be strictly biblical in scale. Millions, just let that sink in, millions of starving, disoriented, and terrified people will flood across the borders. They will surge into China and rush towards South Korea, overwhelming border posts, minefields, and barbed wire with sheer human mass. No economy on Earth can absorb a refugee shockwave of that magnitude. South Korea's social safety net will simply snap trying to feed, treat, and integrate 25 million people whose mental clocks are stuck in the 19th century. The dream of a peaceful reunification, of a single prosperous Korea, is a beautiful bedtime story for voters. The reality will cost trillions of dollars and trigger decades of crippling crisis. Southerners will view the Northerners as a massive burden, as savages, while Northerners will resent the Southerners for their wealth and arrogance. It will be a collision of two alien civilizations that happen to speak the same language, but fundamentally cannot understand each other. But the deepest tragedy will unfold inside people's minds. What happens to a nation brainwashed for 70 years into believing they live in paradise and their leaders are living gods when the veil is finally ripped away? What happens when they see how the rest of the world actually lives, when they realize their entire existence was stolen, their sacrifices meant absolutely nothing, and their children starved to death just to pay for the party elite's solid gold toilets? It will trigger a collective psychological trauma, a national nervous breakdown, unleashing a wave of suicides, explosive aggression, and paralyzing apathy. We will be looking at a country plagued by severe PTSD, a crippled nation that has to relearn how to be human, how to make basic decisions, and how to survive without a warden's baton hovering over their heads. China will almost certainly try to send in troops to establish a buffer zone and stem the tide of refugees, while the US and South Korea will scramble to secure the nuclear sites. North Korea will instantly become a battleground for global superpowers, a sandbox where the map of the world gets violently redrawn. The final act of this play has already been written by history. We just don't have the exact date for the premiere. But we can already hear the stage props creaking. We can see the actors forgetting their lines, and we can smell the smoke drifting in from backstage. North Korea is a ticking time bomb buried deep beneath the foundation of modern civilization, and the ticking is growing louder every single day. The world has grown comfortable looking away, used to buying its conscience with humanitarian aid, pretending this is just a localized problem. But when it finally detonates, the shrapnel is going to hit everyone. We are standing on the rim of a dormant volcano that is boiling with magma just beneath the surface. It will erupt, reminding us all of the brutal cost of our apathy and the true price of the freedom we so often take for granted. The curtain is about to fall, and in the pitch black that follows, we are all going to be very, very afraid.